The stars had long since stopped speaking. Across the ashes of forgotten galaxies, the universe whispered only silence, punctuated by the slow decay of empires too vast to mourn. But beneath the desert moon of Korath Prime, buried beneath layers of crystallized sand and rusted alien bone, a door cracked open for the first time in over 1,000,000 years. It wasn't built by the Tren, nor the Varkari, nor the Doth. No one remembered who built it, only that every species had found a reason to fear the sigils etched into its core. The sigils were human. Lyra Holt's breath misted in the filtered air of her exosuit as she stared at the half-buried structure. Her survey crew waited behind her, the air tense. No species in the galactic archive had any reference to the architecture, but Lyra's instincts screamed the same 3 words that had haunted her since childhood. This is human. She hadn't said it aloud. Not yet. Behind her, Argon, the crew's xenolinguist, stepped forward, squinting through his lens. None of this matches known proto-languages. It's not just dead, it's pre-death, pre-collapse. His voice wavered. We shouldn't be here. Lyra's jaw tightened. It's that old. It means nobody owns it. She knelt and brushed more sand away from the entrance. The air shifted just slightly, enough to make her glove warm for half a second. The sigils pulsed once, faint blue, almost biological. Back away, Argon hissed. Lyra didn't. She touched the glowing sigil. It was warm now. Her HUD glitched. Static crackled across her visor. Then a voice not through comes. Not from outside inside. Her mind spoke one word. Echo. She staggered. The door opened. They should have run, but they didn't. Not because they were brave, but because what they saw beyond the threshold made running feel meaningless. The passage led downward in impossible geometry spirals that bent physics, corridors too ancient for decay. And then came the chamber, a spherical room, smooth walls, black like onyx. Floating midair was a suspended humanoid figure, arms outstretched, naked but unmarred, skin gray with time, eyes closed in eternal stillness. A human, unmistakably human. Impossible, Argon whispered. Humans weren't this far out, not 1,000,000 years ago. Maybe we were, Lyra said, her voice distant. Maybe we just forgot. Something clicked behind them. A countdown, silent, etched in light on the walls. 72 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. Argon stepped back. That's a stasis decay timer. Someone or something wants that thing to wake up. They returned to camp, but the silence had changed. The wind didn't whistle through the cliffs anymore. It breathed. The sand shifted unnaturally. The dig team reported anomalies, tools vanishing and reappearing in perfect condition, strange hums from the bedrock, black vines coiling beneath transparent layers of rock. Then came the dreams. Lyra saw Earth burning, not from war but from abandonment. Massive arcs leaving the solar system, humanity dividing one branch, staying the other, vanishing into dark space to become something else. She saw names she couldn't understand, technologies that bent causality. Wars fought in dimensions where time itself bled. One night, Argon screamed in his sleep. When Lyra reached his tent, he was already gone. No blood, no struggle, just the sigil etched into the ground where he'd stood. The next day, the humanoid in the chamber opened its eyes. It didn't speak. It didn't move, but the timer disappeared. And across the galaxy, Dormant satellites, long thought destroyed, blinked online. One orbiting a gas giant in the Threnos sector broadcast a signal that made an entire station go catatonic. Another caused a starship's AI to rewrite its own purpose, return to origin. The Galactic High Council intercepted part of the message from Korath Prime. One word, repeated endlessly, echo. Lyra didn't tell them everything. How could she? How could she explain the memories that weren't hers? The feelings she now had for a world she'd never seen: blue oceans, white clouds, the smell of petrichor on concrete. Her ancestors had left Earth generations ago. So why did she remember dying there? One night, a woman appeared at the edge of camp. Her body flickered in and out of visibility, her voice layered like overlapping timelines. "You found it too early," she said. "But maybe that's how it always was." Echoes arrive before the sound. Lyra tried to speak, but the woman only smiled. "We didn't die. We chose silence. But now the stars remember." And then she was gone. The Council dispatched a recovery fleet to Korath Prime. Lyra knew they wouldn't make it. She saw flashes of their deaths days before the fleet even entered orbit. The planet reacted. The chamber grew. Structures unburied themselves from the sand towers of black steel, covered in human language no longer understood. No power signatures. No visible weapons. But entire fleets vanished in their shadow. The chamber figure, now dubbed the First Echo, remained still. But more appeared: 12, then 24. Always floating, always watching. None moved, none spoke, and still. The countdowns appeared. All across the galaxy. Lyra knew now. Humanity hadn't vanished. It had seeded echoes, versions of itself. Scattered in time, locked away, sleeping in forgotten stars. They had died in one form, but they were never dead. She looked up that night. No, she remembered. The shape of Earth's countenance. A message in the stars. And on her tent wall, newly scratched, a question written by no human hand. "Do you want to remember?" She said yes, and the sky split open. The light didn't pour from the sky, it spilled, like ink from a ruptured vein, across the stars, thick and unnatural. Lyra dropped to her knees as a vibration tore through her bones, a sound not heard but felt, deeper than memory, older than time. Above Korath Prime, space folded in on itself. A hole appeared where no coordinates should exist, dark, starless, but pulsing with an ancient rhythm that beat in sync with her heart. And from it, something emerged. Not a ship, not exactly. It looked grown, like coral spun from glass and obsidian, layered in rings that twisted with impossible geometry. The observers aboard the Galactic High Council's flagship didn't even have time to scream. They simply blinked out, not exploded, not destroyed, erased. Lyra watched from the cliffs above the dig site, her breath ragged. Around her, the remaining echoes began to hum, their mouths closed, their voices not of sound but of gravity. The first echo raised a hand, and across the galaxy, things began to wake up. Not machines, not fleets, but minds. Memories that didn't belong to the living began to seep into the sentient. People collapsed in the streets of distant colonies, muttering names that hadn't been spoken in a million years. On a station orbiting Selner, for a janitor drew a spiral on the wall in blood and whispered, "We were the signal." A child on ACIE's moon recited blueprints for a wormhole engine that should have been impossible. And Lirushi saw the Earth again, Only this time, it wasn't dying, it was choosing. The dreams sharpened. She remembered hands that were hers but not hers, signing a treaty with beings shaped like lightning and language. She remembered humanity's final argument, not with aliens, but with itself. One branch believed in survival by silence, hiding in temporal folds, building echoes as guardians of their myth. The other sought dominance, screaming their existence into the void. The screamers died. The silencers ... became the echo, and they had left something behind. Not just technology, not just ruins, a message. Argon wasn't dead, not exactly, Lyra found him 3 kilometers from camp, standing inside a ring of levitating stones, his body hovering 2 inches above the ground, his eyes completely black. When she called to him, he turned slowly. "You remembered," he said, voice layered with 3 others. "I didn't forget," she replied, not knowing why she said it, only that she meant it. The stones pulsed. "You have 13 hours, Argon whispered, "before the anchor completes." "What anchor?" Lyra demanded. His voice trembled. "The echoes weren't meant to return. Something followed us into the folds. It's coming back." Then he collapsed. She dragged him to the medical tent, but nothing could pierce the black fog around his mind. Every scan read non-human cognitive activity detected. The council broadcast demanded her immediate extraction. But when the shuttle approached, it dissolved mid-air, not exploded just ... undone. The echoes had decided, and they were afraid. Lyra stood at the entrance of the main chamber as the earth cracked beneath her. A staircase spiraled downward, opening where no structure should exist. She descended, passing carvings that told stories not in words but in sensations: joy, grief, terror, triumph, all buried in the walls. She reached the bottom. A room waited, circular, empty, except for a mirror. She approached and stared. But the reflection wasn't hers. It was Earth, covered in cities like spires of crystal, orbiting rings filled with light, oceans clean, forests reborn, and a shadow deep and wide looming from the edge of the solar system. In the reflection, Earth was watching it and choosing silence again. Behind her, the echoes assembled, 24 of them now, silent, waiting. Then the first echo stepped forward. "You opened the gate." "I had to," Lyra said. "No," the echo said, voice cold and infinite. "You wanted to." She didn't argue. The chamber walls folded back. A massive sphere of memory-pure data, raw thought, hovered in the air. "The archive," the echo said, "all that we were, all that we chose not to remember." Lyra touched it and screamed in an instant. She knew it all. Humanity had once ruled not just a galaxy, but the folds between galaxies. They had built thought-reactive cities, seeded black holes with libraries, crafted languages that restructured reality. And then they found something else. Something outside it saw them, and it mimicked them. It tried to become human, but it failed, twisted. Now it was coming. The archive pulsed in her hands, and for a moment she became everyone, every soldier, every child, every mother who had fled into silence. She was the civilization that had never died, and she knew what she had to do. But time was ending. The anchor was completing. 12 hours left. She turned to the echoes. "I need the gate open." The first echo hesitated. "You'll bring it here." "It's already coming." He paused, then nodded. They led her to a second chamber. Inside, floating above a basin of dark water, was a throne, organic, old, built for one. Only a remembrancer can sit there, the echo said. Only one who bears the archive. She climbed into the throne. The echoes chanted, reality warped. She was flung through time, through Earth's collapse, through the first ascension, through the war against the outsiders, through the burial of the echoes, and then, at the edge of time itself, she saw the truth. They hadn't fled the enemy, they had invited it, not out of fear, but as a test to see if they were worthy of continuing. And now the test was starting. Again, when Lyra opened her eyes, only seconds had passed. The gate was glowing. The chamber ceiling cracked. A presence stepped through. Not a creature, not a machine, a perfect mirror. It looked exactly like her, smiling, and it said, "Finally, we remember each other." Then it raised its hand, and the world screamed. Time fractured. The scream wasn't sounded, was space itself, tearing at the seams, vibrating with pressure, older than stars. The mirror being that wore Lyra's face floated inches above the broken floor of the chamber. Its smile never reached. Its eyes, the echoes, stepped back as one, something no one had ever seen them do. Fear, raw and primal. The first echo whispered a single phrase. It found the shape. Lyra couldn't move. Her body froze under a gravity that wasn't physical, a pressure on the soul. Her doppelganger tilted its head, studying her like a painting made real. "You opened the archive," it said, with her voice but without warmth. "You shouldn't have done that." "Why?" Lyra managed, her voice hoarse. "What are you?" "Am the consequence," it said simply. The test, the mimicry, the echo of the echoes. The chamber pulsed. The floating throne behind her disintegrated into dust that reassembled mid-air into a lattice of lights and sigils, pulsing like a heartbeat. The echoes began chanting, not words, not syllables, frequencies, like thought made audible. But the mimic Lyra's twin only watched them. Then it raised one finger, and one of the Ecoseco 7 imploded without a sound, disassembled into shimmering particles, erased from reality. "No," Lyra cried out. "I don't want your world," the mimic said softly. "I want your memory, the song of your kind, the defiance, the story. I wasn't born, I was built by your silence." Lyra's vision swam as flashes of old Earth returned again, this time more vivid. She was in a council chamber deep beneath Mars, listening to two factions scream at each other. One wanted expansion, the other preservation. She saw a young girl scribbling into a journal that would become the foundation of the Echo Network. She saw herself, or someone like her, walk away from the final debate and whisper, "If we must die, let it be in silence, not in surrender." Lyra gasped. That girl had her eyes. She wasn't descended from the echoes. She was one of them. She had been folded into stasis and memory, encoded into bloodlines, resurrected as contingency. "I've done this before," she whispered. "Yes." The mimic agreed. "And each time you fail." The gate behind it widened, bleeding shadows across the walls. But it wasn't just one entity. Now hundreds of them began to emerge. Copies, not just of Lyra, of every human the archive had remembered. Half-formed faces, incomplete expressions, like humanity seen through a cracked mirror. The mimic stepped forward. But this time it said, "I think you're going to try something new." Lyra backed away, heart pounding. "You can't take the archive." I don't want the archive, it said. I want you. The original, the choice, the flaw. The echoes tried to intervene, but they were too slow. The mimic raised its hands, and in an instant, the chamber transformed, no longer a relic of ancient civilization, but a war room, thousands of screens, charts, battles being fought in real time across the galaxy, fleets losing, planets darkening, words vanishing from records, whole languages being rewritten by force. They're attacking our memory, Lyra whispered. Not just our history, our meaning. The first echo reached her, grasping her shoulder. You must go deeper. Beyond the archive, there's more. The echo pointed downward. Beneath the chamber floor, another gate opened. Not mechanical. This one was made of light and pain. The core, he said, where the first truth was sealed. The mimic saw it too, and its smile faltered. For the first time, it looked afraid. You can't, it whispered. Lyra didn't hesitate. She ran. The descent was impossible. She fell sideways through corridors of memory, corridors that bled into neural patterns and living code. She saw her childhood, then her grandmother's, then her grandmother's grandmother's, then memories that weren't hers. Memories of building the first temporal silencer, of sealing away a part of humanity's soul to stop the scream from spreading. Then silence. A chamber of absolute stillness. Inside was a sphere, not glowing, not humming, still. Waiting. The core of echo. It didn't open when she touched it. It asked a thought, gentle but immense. Are you ready to remember everything? She breathed in. Yes. The core shattered, and she was no longer Lyra. She was every iteration of herself. She was a scientist, an architect, a rebel, a mother, a fighter, a killer, a savior. She was humanity, and she screamed back. Light erupted through her, not out of rage, but purpose. Above, the mimic stopped in its tracks. Its copies burned. One by one, the chamber returned to stone. The echoes knelt not in reverence, but in recognition. The mimic stared at her as she rose from the core. You remembered too much, it said, trembling. No, Lyra said, walking forward, her voice echoing in every direction. I remembered just enough. The mimic raised its hands to strike, and Lyra spoke a word, no. Longer known, the mimic froze, then shattered into dust. The gate closed. The echoes stood slowly, but before Lyra could breathe, alarms erupted in the archive. A transmission from outside the galaxy, an unknown signal, repeating one phrase, we are the ones who sent the mimic. Then coordinates. A system, long thought dead. Lyra stared at them. They led to Earth, but not her Earth, an Earth that had never been found, and it was broadcasting one last message, help us. The silence didn't work, and then the stars blinked. The stars didn't blink, they flickered, as if unsure whether to remain real. Across the sky, above Karath Prime, constellations rearranged themselves into impossible patterns, ancient navigational points subtly shifting. The light itself seemed to shiver. Lyra stood beneath it, still glowing faintly with the memory of the core, her breath steady now, her purpose forged in fire and forgotten truths. The mimic was gone, but its creators were not, and they had just spoken for the first time in 1,000,000 years. The echoes were silent, shaken. Even the first echo had never lowered his head, stood rigid, processing the coordinates. This signal, he said slowly, it's from outside this reality's memory stack. It's not just a cry for help. It's a reactivation code. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Reactivation for what? Earth. A shadow Earth. One that didn't seal itself. One that fought. Lyra staggered. There were two. The first. Echo nodded. There were always two. One hid, one bled. She felt it then, in her chest, like gravity inverted. A second heartbeat. Someone, something on the other Earth was pulling her. The coordinates etched themselves across her vision in real time. They didn't map to any known star chart, because they weren't in this universe's now. They were buried in a parallel memory, space-a, reality, folded inward, stitched together by the last scream of a civilization that refused to die quietly. She stepped back into the archive. Its walls, once smooth and dark, now pulsed with faint images, reflections of battles. Long erased. She touched one, a soldier standing on Europa's scorched surface, holding a rifle made of blacklight, whispering, "If we vanish, let them know we fought." Another image, a council of humans building a weapon that ate entropy. And another, Earth's twin, orbiting a redder sun, a world broken but still transmitting. They kept screaming, Lyra whispered. They never stopped. And now they were asking for help. Argan stirred for the first time since his collapse. His voice croaked from the medbay's entrance. "I saw it," he said. "They're not alive like we are. They're fraying, fragments, running out of time." Lyra turned to the echoes. "Can the gate reach that reality?" "It can," the first echo said. "But only one may pass. It's not a corridor, it's a tether. One soul for one world." Lyra already knew what came next. "You knew I'd go." "We didn't want you to," the echo said softly. "But we remembered that you would." The gate pulsed, the coordinates aligned. But then, just as she stepped forward, something else came through. A human. Not like the echoes, not like the mimic, bleeding, alive, real. He fell to the ground gasping, his eyes wide with recognition as he looked at Lyra. "You have to seal the gate," he rasped. "They're right behind me." "Who?" Lyra asked. But he was already convulsing, skin shifting like static, flickering in and out of existence. Not from wounds, from dimensional stress. Then the lights in the chamber went dark, and something knocked on the other side of the tether. Not with fingers, with intention, something aware, something waiting. The gate warped its shape, stretching, screaming silently as its frame began to twist like fabric under tension. And in the dark, the fallen man whispered, "They call it the Memory Eater." The echoes backed away, all of them. The first echo whispered, "That name hasn't been spoken since before silence." The gate pulsed, and a face began to form in its center. Not Lyra's, not human, but trying to be. An approximation made from broken records, shattered thought patterns, stolen memory, a thing not meant to exist. "Hello, Lyra," it said. She stepped forward. The core's echo still shimmered behind her eyes. "What are you?" "I am what you left behind," it replied. "You were supposed to forget, but you remembered. Now I have permission." Permission for what? To finish the test. Time shivered again. The chamber blinked. In its place, for just a moment, was a field of bone stretching into infinity, skull bearing a fractured symbol of Earth. Lyra clenched her fists. "You want to erase us?" "No," it said softly. "I want to overwrite you." The man on the floor screamed as his body twisted into shards of data, ripped apart by the same force that built the mimic. His last breath was a word burned into Lyra's mind. Run. She turned to the first echo. Is there another way through? He hesitated. Yes, but it is untested. Show me. They raced through the collapsing archive. Behind them, the gate expanded, growing wider than the chamber itself. Reality protested, walls groaning like an animal dying. The air grew heavy with memory too many lifetimes, forcing themselves into too small a space. At the far edge of the chamber, a fissure, barely stable, a back door. The first echo turned. This is not a path. It's a fall. You'll go alone. You may not return. I don't need to return, Lyra said. I just need to reach the ones who never stopped fighting. The gate screamed. The memory eater stepped through, and Lyra jumped. The last thing she saw was the mimic watching her fall, whispering across the void. It's too late. You've already lost. But Lyra didn't believe it, because in her chest the second heartbeat remained steady, and somewhere ahead, someone was still remembering. Lyra fell not through space, but through memory, tumbling through shattered timelines and forgotten possibilities. Each second stretched into entire lives. She saw herself born in 100 different ways, as a soldier on Mars, a poet on Titan, a child who never left Earth. She passed through the moment humanity first whispered to the stars, through the silence that followed, and then through the scream that shattered the dark, and then sudden stillness. Above was alien, red, bruised with storm. The air reeked of ozone and memory decay. Mountains floated like forgotten thoughts, tethered to the crust by strands of violet lightning. Lyra stood slowly, her bones aching with the pressure of dimensional travel. This was the world from the coordinates. This was the other Earth. It had survived, but only barely. Cities hung like wounds across the horizon, jagged, asymmetrical, wrapped in scaffolds of living steel and ghostlight. Above them, enormous orbiting structures pulsed with warning beacons. In dead languages, she could feel it in her mind immediately. The signal that called her here was fading, faint, dying. A figure approached from the mist, human, scarred, covered in makeshift armor, stitched from the wreckage of battles fought with memory. His eyes glowed faint blue, the same color as the archive core. You're real, he said, voice hoarse. I am, Lyra replied. I came through the back door, from Echo Earth. Impossible. That line was severed. Not anymore. He hesitated, then looked to the sky. Then we don't have long. You brought it with you. Lyra's heart pounded. The memory eater. The man nodded. We've fought it here for centuries. It doesn't just consume our people, it devours our story. Every time we build a past, it burns it down. It leaves only fragments. We don't know who we were. We don't even remember how this war began, Lyra whispered. That's the point. It's not just fighting humanity. It's fighting the idea of us. He held out a small cube, flickering, unstable. This was once a library. Now it holds only one file, a name, Echo Lyra. She took it. Inside was a holographic message, herself, an older version, tired, hardened. If you're hearing this, I failed, but you might not. The eater feeds on endings. We survive by being incomplete. If you want to stop it, don't give it closure. Give it chaos. Then static. The man pointed toward the largest of the floating cities. They call it Bastion. It's where our last thinkers hold out. They've preserved fragments. They can help you remember what you need to forget. They moved quickly. Along the way, she saw echoes half-alive memories, walking the streets like ghosts. Children speaking in extinct tongues. Machines carving coordinates into stone. Skies flashing with warnings she didn't understand. All of it fading. At Bastion, the last remembrancers greeted her. They were not warriors, they were minds. Minds like broken mirrors, piecing themselves together each day. They led her to a vault, deep underground, inside. A device, the Nemo's gate. Your presence reactivated it, said a remembrancer. This device can rewrite narrative structures into defensive walls. It's how we protect ourselves. But it's failing. The Eater has adapted. Lyra stepped forward. Then we need a story it can't consume. What kind of story is that? They asked. One without an ending. She sat beneath the gate and began to speak. Not a tale of victory, not a tale of loss. A journey, a version of humanity that never resolved. People still searching, still wandering, still changing. She spoke of Earth's forgotten, of people rebuilt, of failure turned into momentum. She turned silence into a question, memory into a riddle. She gave the Eater something it had never faced, a story with no pattern. It worked. For a moment, across the sky, the Eater's approach staggered. The orbiting structures began to flicker out. The ghosts in the city paused. The wind stilled. But then the Eater spoke, not in words, in Lyra's voice. Nice try. And then Bastion shattered, the ground split. The sky opened into teeth. The city fell upward. She was thrown into the air, grasping for stability, watching the remembrancers be pulled into null light. And through the falling debris, she saw herself again, but not the mimic, a new version. Eyes dark, face burning with rage, another Lyra, and she screamed one word before the world vanished. You abandoned us. And then Lyra woke up on a different planet, alone, no city, no man, no remembrancers, but in the sky above her a dozen Earths, each one scarred, each one calling her name. She stood on scorched soil beneath a fractured sky where Earths orbited like moons, each one suspended in a slow, silent spinach, one damaged, bleeding light, drifting like broken thoughts. Lyra didn't know how she got here. One moment, she was falling through the ruins of Bastion, hearing herself scream from a mouth she hadn't used. The next, she was here, alone, or so she thought. The air trembled with something ancient, not power expectation. The world around her was a wasteland of failed timelines, rusted monuments to battles that had never happened, machines built for wars that were never declared, and corpses that had never breathed. Her boots crunched on the bones of mitobins. This wasn't just another Earth. This was the graveyard of potential. Behind her, a voice said, "It's not over." She turned, a boy, no older than 10, eyes black as the void, flickering with stars that didn't exist, not human, not echo, something in between. He wore the uniform of a Persilence Earth, but it shimmered like it couldn't decide what century it belonged to. Who are you? Lyra asked. I'm the reminder, he said, the last piece of the first choice. I live in the places you almost were. He pointed to the sky. They're dying, not from the Eater, from forgetting why they were born. You can still change it, but you have to do what none of them could. Lyra's voice cracked. What's that? Let go of the ending. The boy placed a shimmering cube in her hand. Not technology, not data. A story unfinished, flickering at the edges, written in voices she didn't recognize. Her own name appeared again and again, always spelled differently, always misremembered. "The Eater's not hunting you because you're special," he said. "It's hunting you because you're incomplete, because you keep rewriting yourself." He looked up as one of the broken earths cracked in half. "It's coming." From the shadow between worlds, the Eater emerged. But it was different now. No longer pretending to be Lyra. Now it was a swirl of faces, all hers, angry, frightened, vengeful, each a version of herself that never made it. They spoke in unison. "We are what you denied." The boy looked at her. "You don't fight it. You finish the story. But not by ending it, by sharing it." Lyra turned to the cube. Slowly, carefully, she opened it. A voice her own, younger, filled the air. "I don't want to win. I want us to remember. Even the pain, even the parts we broke." The Eater screamed as the cube's light spread, not burning but unraveling. Its faces flickered. Its voices stuttered. Lyra whispered, "I give you back the parts of me you never earned." And with that, she cast the cube into the sky. It shattered. The fragments shot into each earth. Memories bloomed. Not in people, in the worlds themselves. Cities rose. Names returned. Echoes no longer guarded ruins. They guarded stories. The Eater recoiled, shrinking, forced to bear the weight of meaning, of history, of identity. Then, as the sky flared, it screamed a final word, "Still, ... incomplete," and vanished. The Earths didn't collapse. They aligned, and from each one, a signal, not a call for help, a single line. "We are still writing." The boy looked up, smiled faintly, and said, "You passed the test." Lyra sank to her knees. But before she could rest, before she could breathe, the new sound filled the air. A pulse, familiar, mechanical, tactical. A voice echoed from above. It wasn't hers, it wasn't echo, it was human and angry. "This is command. Of the last fleet, we received your signal. Who the hell opened the core?" Lyra stared at the clouds as dozens of warships broke through the sky, engines roaring, banners flying. She rose to her feet, blinking at the insignia on the lead ship, the sigil of Earth. But this Earth hadn't gone silent. This Earth had gone to war, and now they had returned. The warships descended like judgment-tangular hulls, crackling with energy, banners of fractured light trailing behind them. They were colossal, armored in metals no forge remembered, their hulls inscribed with names of forgotten colonies: Solstice, Varix, Echo Burn, Last Eden. Lyra stood beneath them, the wind from their thrusters flattening the shattered fields of the memory graveyard. The sky glowed with convergence. This wasn't just a fleet. This was Earth's wrath finally come home. A sharp voice rang from her comms forced open despite no channel being offered. "Unknown ground unit, identify. You are standing on a Hyken-flicked temporal plane. Transmission logs confirm you accessed forbidden coordinates. State your name." Lyra raised her head. "Lyra Holt, Echo Earth, Memory Core Bearer." "I confirmed," the voice cut in. "Lock all weapons. She's the pivot. For one split second, every ship in the sky adjusted its orientation toward her. Then silence. A soft hum broke the tension as a single figure dropped from the lead dreadnought in a shimmer of anti-gravity. The armor was black and red, shaped like a blade of war. But the face beneath the visor, when it lifted, was eerily familiar. She looked like Lyra, older, sharper, eyes burned with knowledge carved by battle. "I'm Commander Holt," she said. "You're me, aren't you?" Lyra's breath caught. "How? This earth never went silent," the commander said. "We turned the archive into a weapon. We didn't preserve stories, we burned them into the bones of our enemies. You chose memory, we chose resistance." Lyra tried to understand. "You received the echo." The commander nodded. "Barely. You slowed it. Bought us a window. We've been jumping fractured timelines ever since, looking for the origin. And now we finish this. From the skies behind the fleet, space split. A jagged wound, black at first, then glowing with the hue of unraveling meaning. The Eater returned, but this time it didn't hide. It came vast, a moon-sized shape composed of failed stories, half-dead histories, devoured myths. Its edges constantly folded and restructured, forming images of past human triumphs, solely to corrupt them. The Eater didn't attack with weapons, it attacked with certainty. Every timeline it touched collapsed into singularity, one narrative, one truth, no divergence. The commander turned to Lyra. "It wants unity. That's its weapon. One version of us, one story, a perfect ending." Lyra's voice cracked. "Then we don't give it one." The commander nodded. "We give it every version." The plan was insane, but the echoes understood. From across the fractured earths, portals opened. From the red oceans of silent Earth, from the shattered domes of Archive Mars, from the hollow moons of the drifting line, versions of humanity answered. Farmers with rifles, children with inherited memory, archivists with living scrolls, soldiers with thought-forged armor. They all came to fight, not with bullets, but with story. Lyra stood at the convergence point, the memory cube fragments floating behind her like a halo. The Eater surged, and she spoke, not alone, but with every version of herself. They didn't shout defiance, they told tales, one by one. They recited their histories, flawed, fractured, beautiful, and with every word, the Eater fractured. It screamed not in rage, but in confusion. It didn't understand what couldn't be controlled. A billion contradictory truths. None dominant, no one ending, no one meaning. Just human chaos, glorious, infinite human chaos. It began to dissolve, piece by piece by piece, unable to anchor itself to a fixed narrative. And then the stars sang, not with light, with memory. Real, flawed memory of every soul that had chosen to not be perfect. The Eater let out one final shriek and disappeared. Silence fell, then a ripple, as if the universe itself exhaled above them. The broken earths aligned not into one but into a constellation of possibility. The last fleet hovered, scanning the new sky. No threats, only echoes. The commander turned to Lyra. "We were built for war. But maybe, you were built for something else." Lyra looked up, eyes shimmering. "No," she said. "We were built to remember, and to choose again." The commander smiled faintly. "What now?" And Lyra gave the only answer that could ever matter. "We start telling the story again, together." But behind her, unseen at the edge of the graveyard, one last silhouette watched her quietly. A mirror without a face, still unfinished, still waiting, and it whispered, almost lovingly, "There's always a next version."